Are you tired of lugging around heavy, bulky tree stands, whether you're using a climber or a hang-on, and would prefer to hunt lighter and more mobile? If you said yes, then you need to check out the Tethered Mantis Saddle and Predator platform. For me, this setup has done a couple things for me over the past year and a half. I've definitely been more mobile, lighter, and when you get into those situations where maybe the wind switches on you or whatever, and in years past you didn't want to pull all your gear just because you didn't want to move it, didn't want to make additional noise and things of that nature, this kind of solved all those problems for me. And I'm able to kind of tear down quickly, make a move if I need to make a move, and get set up without losing a whole lot of hunting time. The other thing I do a lot more of with this is actually I'll still hunt my way through or just kind of go into an area where I'd like to check out, scout with all my stuff on my back. It's super light, so I don't really even notice it, and I hunt to where I'm going, or I still hunt through to where I'm ultimately going to set up, which is a great benefit, has been a great benefit to me so far this year. If you're interested in all these things, then you need to head over to tetherednation.com, check out all their information related to saddle hunting, and release your inner tree ninja. First thing I do in the morning before a hunt is, of course, I have to have my morning coffee, and I'm sure most of you out there probably feel the same. Make sure you're filling your mug with Skull Brew coffee, as it is the only coffee company that is both 2% for conservation certified and, of course, donates 10% of their profits to conservation organizations who are helping us to secure the future of our wild places. So head to skullbrewcoffee.com and choose between 3 kilo roasts of coffee and know that you are supporting conservation with every sip. All right, if you listen to this podcast for any length of time, you guys know that I am good friends with all the guys over at Exodus. And I want to give you a quick heads up that you should be checking out some of their content if you haven't already. They have a podcast out called Trail Cam Radio, and they release new episodes every Tuesday. So the day before you listen to this one, you could be listening to that one as well. They've done some deep dives with some great guests. You'll recognize some of these names as Jeff Sturgis, Dan Enfalt, and the Hunting Public, and they also jump into and talk to some less-known hunters who consistently are getting it done many times on public land. If you prefer to watch podcasts, if you're looking for some video content, they have a YouTube channel as well, and that is packed, of course, with great videos and interviews. One of the most popular ones they did is a candid interview with John Eberhardt, and if you know anything about John, you always get the straight dope from him. And for specifically my PA listeners, they just recently posted a public land big woods interview with Steve Shirk, which I consumed, and it is pretty awesome. This dude's killing hammers and getting on giant deer in Pennsylvania, so it's absolutely a must listen. So if you're looking for more whitetail content, especially here during the course of the season, you just can't get enough. Be sure to head over to their podcast, Trail Cam Radio, and their YouTube channel, Exodus Trail Cameras, and drop them a subscription or review and let them know that Truth from the Stand sent you. If you're also in the market for a trail camera, over the last 4 years, of course, Exodus has consistently showed they build quality trail cameras that flat out just work. Of course, the best trail camera warranty, period. Every single camera is backed by a 5-year warranty and even comes with a theft and damage coverage. That's right, 5 years, literally half a decade, you'll be covered by the Exodus 5-year warranty. But more than likely, you won't need it because the cameras are built to last. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you are listening to episode number 149, bringing you the Iowa Rut Log, day number 6. We have action, so stay tuned. All right. What is happening, everybody? Happy Thursday. I think this will come out on Thursday if I got my days correct. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope you're feeling fine. Hope the deer words, they're hard today. A lot of things are hard today, as you'll find out. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope you're having some good action in the timber. Hopefully things are starting to pop for you. It seems like here, it is, I know I've said this the past 2 episodes, but like every day it just seems to ramp up just a little bit more and just a little bit more. Hopefully I'll get with John here and we'll do another podcast together to kind of go through what we've been seeing. We've had some late evenings, getting back late and stuff like that, trying to make sure I get my sleep so I can get up in the morning and grind during the course of the day. But today was a fun day. Essentially, coming out of yesterday, John and I had, and I know I teased that we had action, and I'll get to the action here in a second. Coming out of yesterday, we had a south wind today. And so knowing that, I knew I wasn't going to be able to hunt the general area that I had hunted yesterday, or the whatever day that was, it would have been Tuesday, I guess. So today, Wednesday, I was having to make an adjustment. And as I was looking at the different properties that I was scouted in March and stuff like that, I didn't have a whole lot necessarily that was going to play for that specific wind that I had familiarity with. I could hunt. I think I'd mentioned in the past podcast I was planning to hunt the north side of the bedding area that I was hunting previously, where I had a couple encounters with some decent deer. But as I started thinking about it, the temperature was going to rise today. It was going to get up to close to 60. And then tomorrow, if as you're listening to this on Thursday, we're going to have about a 20-degree temp drop. Actually, a little bit more than that. It's going to go from nearly 60 to about 35. And we're going to have a north wind. So I didn't really want to go back into that same area and hunt it again on a wind that would work on the north side of that bedding area. And I could set up, all my wind would be kind of funneled into this one draw, and it would kind of shoot down, and like I would stay clean from where I've been seeing deer move from. So I wasn't too concerned about that. But the other thing I thought about was like, is this really a prime day to hunt that spot? Now look, big deer move on days that are warm whenever you're in pre-rut and rut. Like that's, we know that. But if I'm going to kind of stack the deck for myself, I would prioritize hunting a better weather day in that area just because it is good. At least the one sit I've had in there so far, it was awesome. And then John has sat that area as well, and he's seen the same thing over the course of several years. So I don't have a doubt that it's going to continue to be good. It's just a natural little funnel with a bedding area that bucks like to cruise through to check out these two different bedding areas. So with that, I kind of, that was really my plan last night as I was recording the previous podcast. And then John and I talked, and, he was like, hey, tomorrow's going to be kind of weather, what's your plans? And I had said that, I was planning to hunt that north end of that bedding area. He said, cool. He's like, hey, I'm going to go hunt. He has a lease, it's not too far from here. He's like, I'm going to go hunt the lease. He's like, and slide into a box blind. He's like, if you want to come along, you're more than welcome to come along. He's like, and if there's a buck that pops out that maybe isn't on my list, that doesn't make my list, he's like, you can take a crack at him or whatever. And he did see a nice deer over there two nights ago, or 2 days ago rather. And so I was like, you know what, I don't really want to go in and hunt that area because it's not a great weather day, and I'd like to kind of save it for whenever I know things are really popping, which should be tomorrow, the next 2 to 3 days. Should really ramp up. And so I was like, you know what? I've been kind of hunting it kind of hard the past several days, having a nice leisurely stroll into a box blind, this morning or today wouldn't be the worst thing for me. It's like I don't have to get up super early, or not as early, because it's an easy hike in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, you know what? That, and I get to spend some time with John. We just get to kind of catch up, hang out, and hunt together. He and I don't really ever get to hunt together. So I was like, cool, let's do that. So I met him over there. We had a sit, saw a couple does. Very first light, and that was about it. And then as we started talking, I was trying to figure out where I was going to go, and I was still kind of set on hunting that north side. Well, the way he not convinced me, but what he had said made a lot of sense the previous day, where he was like, look, you're going to go in and try to hunt that north end of that bedding area. He's like, which I think is a good plan. However, he's like, you've not ever walked into that piece and tried to find a tree in the dark on that side, on that specific area. So you might end up bumbling around and hurting yourself. And I was like, that's a good point. So I'll hunt the box blind with you and just kind of have it a leisurely morning. And so I was still thinking, he's like, go in and do that in the afternoon, after daybreak. That way you have some light. Everything's kind of back to bed. Sure, there'd be bucks cruising, but you can probably slip in there and find a tree and get up and hunt it. So I was like, that sounds like a good idea. So did the box blind with John in the morning. And then as we were getting ready to leave the lease, I was like, trying to figure out where I was going to go. And I was really like, what? I don't know that I want to go hunt that north end of that bedding area because I just don't want to damage it on a not great weather day if I can help it. And, I was like, maybe today'd be a good day to go just try my luck somewhere else, maybe do a little freelancing, a little freestyling, see what I run into. And so there was this piece that's across the road from where I've kind of been prioritizing my hunting, or at least the good spot that I have that I know that I know works. There's a bunch of public on the other side of the road that John and I had scouted in March, but we scouted, I guess what I'll call the, I don't know, let's call it the east the eastern part of it, or I guess it would be like the northeast part of it. Couple of fingers of timber that kind of come out in this, like, this CRP kind of area that has a bunch of trees planted in it and stuff. We shed hunted it and scouted it last year. Didn't find a bunch of sign necessarily. But it was an area I was familiar with. We did jump a buck. When we were in there, we found a buck bed. And so I was planning to kind of head over that way. And then I was talking to a guy that I think I'd mentioned him in the podcast yesterday, this guy, Corey, that I've kind of become, friendly with. He's a local, he's from around here. We're hunting a similar area, and so he's given me a few tips and stuff like that. And I was telling him, I was looking on the map and there's this pond on that same piece of public, but I've never scouted down that way. And he said, yeah, he's like, if you go down there, he's like, there's some access roads down through there. He's like that, you get into some pretty good stuff down in that area. He's like, it's definitely worth a check. He had some buddies who hunted, I don't know exactly where, but they were hunting on that side of the road somewhere, and they had some encounters with some decent deer. So I was like, all right, cool. Maybe I'll give that a check. So after John and I left, I had decided that's where I was going to go. I was going to go over to the other side of the road. I wasn't sure if I was going to go where John and I had scouted, or if I was just going to kind of like go off into no man's land of a place I've not been before and just see what I find. Well, I decided the latter. I was like, you know what? I feel like it's hot out. I feel like there's a pond down there. Probably be a little cooler down that way is what I'm kind of thinking. I have a good wind to walk in there. The wind's in my face, but depending on as I'm making my way to the pond, I should probably have a crosswind if I set up anywhere in that general area. There's 2 draws that kind of funnel down into that pond, which I kind of liked. And as I was looking at the satellite image, I could see that there was a lot of thick stuff around it, whether it was pines or whether it was just like understory. That I liked as well. And I was like, you know what, if I can just get on the edge of some of this, I'm sure there's does bedded in that, especially in the edge of some of those draws, probably be pretty good. So I got headed in, and it starts off as like a 2-track, and then it kind of narrows down into like a smaller, like kind of path or whatever. I'm kind of walking my way down through, and I don't know, I probably saw 12 scrapes on my way through this little path. And I mean, it's got some side cover, right? It's looking pretty good, looking pretty bucky. And what I was really looking for, I was like, man, I want to find a small cluster of scrapes, a primary scrape area, the golden goose, if you will, the primary scrape area. And I'd love to find one with like a hammer rub near it. Cause that to me will tell me that, and of course fresh, that to me will tell me that there's a buck who's spending time there. These things have been tended. There's a fresh rub there. It would tell me all the things I kind of want to be told. And a cluster of scrapes together, signifying that it's a primary scrape area. And I, of course, want it to be close to some side cover. And so I keep hiking. I just keep running out. I keep passing scrape after scrape after scrape with licking branch. And I finally got to this one spot where there were 5 scrapes that were all within probably like a 10-yard area. And then there was just a hammer rub, and I'll probably use the picture of the rub as the post for Instagram tomorrow associated with this podcast, so you'll see that. But I put my bow up next to it, and I shoot a 30-inch bow, and I mean, I could probably stack 2 of my bows on top, another bow on top of my bow, and it might get to the top of that rub. I mean, wasn't a huge tree, but it was tall. And I was like, jackpot. This is where I'm going to set up. And it was like this path that it was along. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to set up far off the path. I just want to get in the timber a little bit to where I can get some break up. I can get a little cover. And then I'm going to find a tree to get into. And I found a relatively small tree because I prefer smaller trees. And I ended up only climbing up 2 sticks. So 2 sticks with a 5-step aider. I was probably maybe 12 feet off the ground, 11, probably not even because I set my second stick a little lower. So 11 feet, because I ran into some branches at that point. I didn't want, can't cut them because I'm on public, but I also wanted them to kind of hang over because I wanted a little bit of cover as well. So I had a little bit of cover to the back of me, to the side of me. And I had that trail was right to my left, so to my strong side to shoot. And I was like, man, the perfect scenario would be like just a buck wandering up this path to check these scrapes and getting like a 15-yard chip shot. So I'm sitting there, and I did like my first rattling sequence probably at like 1:30 roughly. And nothing, right? It's warm out now too. It's getting kind of warm. I think it topped out at like 60 degrees, but it's a nice, nice day to be in a tree. It's just, bluebird skies, really nice, really light wind. The wind was being consistent at this point. I had a really good crosswind. So it was kind of coming in my face and kind of shooting up the trail. And what I was playing was everything below me. I didn't anticipate anything really coming up from above me. So I'm sitting there, and it's about 2:30, and I go to grab my rattling antlers again. And I go to pick them up, and what I like to do is I keep them on my bow tow rope, and I keep them on the ground, and then I'll pop them up off the ground. That way they smack together, and they hit the ground, and it sounds like hooves hitting the ground, and it kind of mimics deer's hooves hitting the ground while they're sparring. And so, but I wanted to have a little bit more volume, so when I want that, it's like I'll pull them up to me, and I'll crack them together with my hands, and I'll rattle that way. And so that's what I was going to do in this instance. So I was getting ready to pull the antlers up, and I thought, you know what, before I do that, I should probably just make a cursory check to make sure there's nothing around me, right? Because I've been busted before from calling, or rattling without checking my surroundings, or seen a deer, grunted, tried to grunt him in. He moved off. I thought he moved off, didn't check my surroundings, tried to grunt him in one more time, and then he ended up being, 20 yards away. That happened to me in Ohio. So I checked my surroundings, and as soon as I did that, I saw antlers coming up the trail. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I put the antlers down, grabbed my bow, and from the moment I saw him, he was probably 40 yards away. I didn't have a shot. He was on the come right up the trail. And when I saw him, he was no doubt a shooter, 100%. 4.5-year-old, as far as I could tell, was a mainframe 8. Once I recognized he was a shooter, I was not counting points any longer. I was trying to figure out where I was going to get the shot opportunity. And the way he was working, I thought for sure he was going to set up and give me that 15-yard chip shot while he was working a scrape and a licking branch. So he's walking up the trail. He hits a licking branch, and at this time I'm grabbing the camera, swiveling the camera around, trying to get the camera on him. And after he gets done working that licking branch, instead of walking up to the next set of scrapes, he dives off into the timber. Now I had a 24-yard shot at that point, but I was fiddling with the camera, and I couldn't get my rangefinder on it fast enough, or on him, or on that area fast enough to range it to know how far it was. And so I missed the opportunity to take that shot, and he got a little further into the timber, and there was a window that I had between like two small pieces of brush that I could slip an arrow through. 28 yards. Awesome. Drew back. He stopped, was scratching his head with his left back hoof. He put it down, and as soon as he put it down, I didn't have to bleed. I didn't have to nothing, and I let it rip. And from the moment I let the arrow go, I knew that it was low. And I heard the arrow hit the ground. He squatted, so I knew I didn't hit him. If I did hit him at all, I didn't hit him hard. And he bounded maybe 20 yards and just stopped. And at that moment, I knew that I had missed him. Pretty going to be honest, pretty pissed off about it. I grunted at him, tried to get him to come back. He, of course, was like, hell no. He went up the side of the ridge, out of that draw up the side of a ridge. And once he got out of sight, I got down and went over to find my arrow, try to find blood, and found the arrow, a little bit of blood on the broadhead, a little bit of fat and white hair. Looks like I just grazed the underneath of his rib cage, and nothing. Pretty disappointed. That's a shot that I make probably 9 times out of 10. And the reality of it is I probably screwed the pooch on that, and I'm not going to blame it on the camera necessarily, but it certainly didn't do me any favors. But I blew a great opportunity at a very large mainframe 8, super clean. If I had to guess, I would put him at probably mid 140s. And being completely honest, I just shit the bed. I'm not going to lie and say that I was a stone cold, killer, cold blood running through my veins. Like, that deer definitely had me a little shook. Just watching him come in, I mean, just huge tank of a body, huge rack, just everything you come to Iowa for, and some people out there might say, well, that's, there's bigger deer than that in Iowa. Yeah, sure. But I think the thing that really, I think got at me the most was that, freelance hunting is something I really enjoy. I've been doing a lot more of it this year, and even in Pennsylvania, and I was able to have some encounters in PA, doing some freestyle hunts. And it's one of those things where, I've begun to kind of pride myself on being able to go to somewhere that I've not been before, walk in, look at a map, figure out where I'm going to go, and then go put the work in and grind and find deer, find sign. And I'm trusting myself a lot more this year in doing that. And each time that I've done it, I've seen deer. I've got on deer. In this case, saw big deer and missed the big deer. And I think that's why it probably bothers me as much as it does. I usually try not to let these things get to me too awful much. Because look, I want to kill a big deer as much as the next guy or girl. But at the end of the day, I try to have some perspective and know that, like, look, deer hunting isn't, as much as we love it, as much as, I love doing it, and I'm having a great time here in Iowa, it's not the end all be all. There are things that are way more important than that. But it doesn't mean it still doesn't piss you off, right? So I'm trying to have some perspective, but it really bothers me because the thing that I've been really working on as far as a deer hunter, probably the past 2 years, of being more in tune of my surroundings, reading sign better, making a game plan, playing the wind better, like all these small things I've started doing to stack things in my favor and give myself a chance. And I gave myself a great chance today and just didn't come through. And I shoot my bow religiously. I mean, I shoot probably at a minimum 3 days a week, if not 5 days a week, most weeks. So it's not like I don't shoot often. And you do all that work and then it doesn't pan out. It just sometimes feels like it was for nothing, but I know better than that. And I'll dust myself off. I will get after it tomorrow and do an all-day sit tomorrow in the quote-unquote the honey hole and try to redeem myself. But I wanted to share with you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly of today because that's my gig. I tell you guys honestly what's going on with me in the hunting woods, and oftentimes personally as well. And I thought that I should, truth be told, I didn't want to even get on and do the podcast tonight because I was pretty pissed off about the whole scenario this afternoon. But it's been a little cathartic here to share it. And if anyone takes a lesson from this, it's don't self-film. No, I'm just kidding. But the camera's definitely getting ditched for the rest of the trip at this point. But it's, take your time. Looking back on it, I probably had more time to make the shot I needed to make than I thought I did. And that's a fail on my part. I know better. I knew that I had more time than I did. He wasn't chasing a doe. He wasn't in a hurry to get anywhere. He was just being a big, lazy public land monarch, looking to check some scrapes and see if he could maybe figure out where a hot doe might be headed to. And I just didn't give myself that opportunity or the time that I needed to execute that shot. My shot sequence was shit. Yeah, so it's on me, and I'll do better next time. So I wanted to share that with you guys. As always, thank you guys for listening. Even with today's outcome, the Iowa trip so far has been a blast. I'm looking forward to the next 10-ish days that I have out here to try to get something done. We've got some really cold weather coming in the next 2 days. Then it'll warm up a little bit. Then next week it gets even colder. So I feel like things are popping. I think the next 2 days are going to be dynamite. And hopefully I'll be able to capitalize on that new weather front and sit in the honey hole because I think I'll have 2 all-day sits in there the next 2 days. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to y'all soon. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you do those 2 things for us. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.